I know I've been quiet for a minute, I've been grinding, still in it, I've been counting these digits. Excuse me, I know I've been quiet for a minute, but I'm back on my business. If you see me, don't trip, just excuse me.
What's up guys, this is Qazi. Welcome back to another video. I've been grading for 14 years and in this video, I'm going to show you how to create a complementary color scheme using a conventional method as well as with this secret tool. We will then match that grade to multiple different shots in different locations and see how well it holds up. And I will also share some pro hacks when it comes to shot matching, so get pumped about that. Complementary color scheme has been around longer than you and me. Three main ways to achieve it is art direction, lighting, and color grading. Now I put it in this sequence because the most superior form of complementary color scheme comes from art direction. Just this is how the colors were separated on set. The second is through lighting, and most of the time it's totally fabricated. Like the lighting, if you really think about it, wouldn't make much sense, but visually it's so pleasing that we buy it. And then the third way is through color grading, which is what we're going to be doing right here. And if you enjoy watching content like this, then please do me a favor, smash the like button, subscribe to the channel, and let's roll the intro. All right, so the two main methods used to create complementary colors are your qualifiers, and the second one is using your curves. So we're going to be using both of those techniques in this video. If you're already familiar with this and are very comfortable using them, then you can skip to the secret tool part. I'm going to have the timestamps up here and in the description below. Let's start with a very simple note tree that I got going on here that is applied to all three shots. First of all, the footage is shot on Blackmagic pocket camera in log. This is our log. And then this is with our X709 with a little bit of changes that I got going on. So let me just quickly take you through what's happening here. So we got our input device transform. I am converting my Blackmagic log footage to my working color space, which is DaVinci Wide Gamut. Love working in this color space, and you get some of the best results in this color space if you're using DaVinci Resolve. And I'm going to be using my exposure balance node set to linear in my gamma, and that's because it uses XYZ color space, which gives you a very uniform results from your shadows to your highlights. Let's just say if you're using your temp and tint, as opposed to if we use log color space, and then when we adjust our temp and tint, the results are not uniform, and then that creates a lot of inconsistency when it comes to shot matching. That out of the way, I'm gonna have all three shots using the same node tree. So we got our IDT, we got our exposure balance set up, ready to go. Then I'm using a vignette. And this vignette, if I just do right here, if we click on the window and we see what we're selecting. So it's basically taking everything around my girl, around my hero, and pulling it down. And I'm using my gamma to do that. Why am I using my gamma? Because I really like what it does compared to lift or gain. If you use lift, everything is gonna get crushed. It looks unrealistic. If you use your gain, sometimes the highlights just get too murky and gray and it just doesn't seem right. Whereas when you use gain, it retains the weight and in all its hues, but at the same time, it will get the job done, which is to bring down the surrounding. So our focus is our main character, and you can see the results are very realistic. And then if I show you my softness, it's set to 30. So around there, you're usually going to get like really good results, but just don't be afraid to play around with these things. Let's just say if I go here and if I just start doing this, it's like, I can just like really feel it out, like where I want it, right? So 30-ish for me worked, but always just mess around with parameters. And that is the best way for you to like get familiar with how much push and pull you can do with each tool and each parameter. That said, let's just keep going with our node tree. Then I have sharpening applied, and that's if we're going to be using noise reduction or something like that after this node. This is pretty good. Or in general, it's set to like such low settings that you can just like leave it on. If you want to learn more about this, I'm going to have a link up top to the video where I go in depth to like what these settings are and why I'm setting them up a certain way. And then here, I'm using Resolve's latest defocus background. Absolutely love it. And just look at what it's doing, okay? Before and after, and just look at how realistic these results are. before and after. Oh my God. Like it's out of this world. And it's so good. Our hero frame is going to be somewhere around here. And now if I do before and after, and if you see what's happening. So if you want to learn more about how I'm creating that, I just released a video explaining that. So check out that video right here. And the links to all that content is going to be in the description as well. Okay. And then for the grain, I started using the Film Look Creator grain. I'm only using it for that. So if I do before and after, there is no color change, none of that, because I feel like it's okay. It's not that great when it comes to like look building, but it's the grain is way better than the OFX that they initially had for grain. So that's why I went in there and I just set that to 35 millimeter. Good. We're good to go. If I punch in and just get really close and show you what's happening for the grain, before, after, really, really natural grain, feels great. It's randomized. So when the video is playing through, it doesn't feel like it's caked on. Love it. It's embedded in the bones of my image. Love it. So leaving that on, this is what we got going on. And then that's translated into all three shots. So what am I going to do next? I'm going to balance my footage first. And since I'm working in linear, my gain becomes my offset in HDR palette. Once again, if you guys are interested and want to learn more about why I'm setting everything up in linear color space, I can do a video. Just drop a comment below and we can delve more into that. But right now, I'm just looking at my vector scope and I'm going to use that my 4 scopes right here to balance my image. So I see that it's leaning more toward green and we can see it in our colorized waveform. So let's pull it out. I'm going to go in my gain and I'm just going to kind of like do that. And I'm just like looking at her. This is great. This is really good. I'm not going to go any further than that because the idea is like anytime you're balancing your image, just know the end goal. Where do you want to go? So in my case, I do want to create complementary color schemes. So then I don't want to go too crazy and just make it pure white and neutral, because then I just have to do extra work to get back to where I want it to go. Because this is sort of like already starting us off at a good base. So like just by doing this much, I'm good. I'm happy. Okay. What happens if I were to take this and now apply it to these 2 shots? So what I can do is I can go under color and I can go and say ripple node changes to selected clips. And as soon as I do that, look what happens. It applied these changes to these shots and it left everything else alone. This is a very advanced technique used by every single pro colorist. That's why having a fixed node tree is very important, because what just happened is that it took note of which node we have to apply these changes to. So if you have a randomized node tree which is not fixed, then this process would not have worked because it would have applied the changes to the wrong node and would have thrown off everything, okay, the entire grade. But having the proper node tree structure, fixed node tree structure, I went from node number 2, which is my exposure balance, and it is exposure balance here, and it is exposure balance here, and it went and applied those changes. Obviously, this scene is very different lighting conditions, so we have to compensate for that. So let's go ahead and do it. So now I'm going to go back in here, and I'm going to go, no, I want to do something more like this. Now, this is way better. So this is before, it's a little bit more on the blue side. We can see it right here in our scopes. This is getting pretty close. I go to the skin, looking pretty good. Skin, right? So like, I mean, this is pretty good. I'm happy with it. Now, the image that I'm going to use to build my complementary color scheme would be this right here. That's going to be my frame for the entire piece, okay? Now that I have my image balanced, the reason why it's so important to balance your image first is because now when we make these creative changes, they're going to apply to everything. All these shots, we're going to do it in batches, and you're going to see what I mean. So what I want to do is I want to create a new node right after vignette, and I'm going to call it split toning, okay? And we're going to accomplish that by using our curves. So basically what we want to do, I'm actually going to do this so we can just buy more real estate. I'm going to put this up here. I'm going to expand this so we can see a little bit more what's going on. The general rule of thumb when you're doing split toning using your curves is that you got to lock in your 18% gray. What is that? Like, I don't want my skin tones or where my skin is sitting to be affected to get either too bright or too dark. So I want to lock that in. How do I do that? I just hover over here, I select my qualifier, I hover over her skin, and I just click right here. And it creates that point, and it's right around 18% gray, which also means that my exposure was great. It was set up like really, really well. So now what I want to do, now that my exposure is locked in, is that I want to actually break this chain. And now I want to modify image the way I want it. So if I were to create a point here and start raising it up, you see like what I'm doing. So I want to put this somewhere around here. And I really, really like how it's pulling up that information. It's very nice. It opened up my image. We can see it in our waveform. And now I want to take the bottom of it and I want to kind of do something like that. I want to have a healthy amount of contrast in my image and nothing is gone. I still have my shadows. I still have my highlights detail. And that's why building your initial contrast and initial base look using your curves is so much more sophisticated and better than doing it with lift gamma gain or anything like that, because we are preserving all this detail. We can see it in our scopes. This is looking pretty good. So I'm going to use my Luma channel there. And now I'm going to start messing around with my RGB because that's where the split toning is going to be created. Basically, if I raise my red up here, I'm adding more red. And if I'm dropping it, I'm adding more teal. And that's what we're used to. Movies like Transformers or even Joker, like there's a lot of these tones going on, or John Wick, stuff like that. So if I go in my blue channel, then I can start doing the same thing. It's like, let's just raise it up a little bit and then drop the blue channel up top. And that's where we start introducing this sort of like nice, like yellow tones. And that's the split toning that's happening. So cooler shadows, warmer highlights, okay? And then if we go to our greens, I can start raising it up a little bit and just like start adding a little bit of this sort of effect. And it's very, very stylized. Now we can go in our red and like, do we want to just kind of like balance it out a little bit? We can go up here. What happens if we go too far? We don't want to go too far. So even something like this, but I don't like how the blacks are getting too contaminated, right? So I'm going to kind of control that. So how can we do that? This is where we can start seeing where we want to bring that effect in, and then where do we want to kind of just go back to like neutral around here, okay? So let's just say that in terms of like my initial split toning, like where I want to go, I'm pretty happy with what's happening. And another reason why we wanted to lock 18% is because you can see like our skin stays intact while we create split toning around the image. So we are modifying and manipulating our shadows, we're manipulating our highlights, but then we're kind of leaving our skin tones as is. So let's just say that I'm kind of happy with where everything is at for now, right? And when we look at the changes, I mean, it's pretty big. I mean, we're making some moves here. So that's great. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go right here. I'm going to create a new node. I'm going to put it right here. I'm going to call it Qualifier, okay? And what's going to happen here is that I'm going to use my qualifiers, and the bulk of complementary colors are going to come from my qualifier, okay? And what's going to happen here is that I'm going to select my qualifier, and I'm going to just click right here, and I'm going to hit Shift H, and it's going to tell me what I'm selecting. So it's selecting too much, and I want to kind of control that. So I'm going to grab my width, and I'm going to start closing it off to something like that. And I'm going to take my center, and I'm going to move it around until I'm getting pretty happy to like what's really happening. Let's leave that open. I don't want to be too tight with these changes. Let's keep it here. Do we want to soften it up a little bit? Because that never hurts, okay? And then what about like adding some softness here too? That doesn't hurt, so I'm going to do that. Something like that. And then I'm going to go ahead in my radius, morph radius, and I'm going to, actually, you know what? I'm going to go under my denoise I meant, and then I'm going to crank it to somewhere around here. I'm going to go under my blur radius, and I'm just going to crank it to something like this. This is looking pretty good. This is pretty good. So I'm going to come out of it, Shift H, and now what I'm going to do is let's just go in our gamma, right? And add a little bit of like this effect, right? So like if I do before and after, very nice. We're adding like those nice warm skin tones. Now what I want to do is I want to right click. I want to go under add node. I'm going to do outside node. And that now if I do Shift H, it's going to select everything but the skin tones. And now what we can do is a couple of different things. We can, one, go into our HDR offset and start driving the rest of the image into, let's try it, into like that tealish cyan. So if I go something like this, And if I do before and after, so it's doing that, not bad. Another thing that we can do, we can just go in my lift gamma gain and in my lift, and I can start doing that. So the beautiful thing about this is that it kind of leaves my skin as is, because my skin is around the gamma, right? And then lift is lift, which means like it's already creating some separation instead of like taking the entire image by offset and then driving it into cooler tones. So we're further adding split toning, if you will, using our lift in this case. So I think I like that. So if I do before and after, I mean, we went places. We just have gone so far with that. So if I take these three, right? Qualifier and split toning, and if I do before and after, you can see the image that we're creating, right? So that is pretty significant. It's pretty impressive. Well, how does it hold up? It holds up pretty nicely. I'm not gonna lie. So if I go here, and if we punch in really close, I think it like maybe breaks a little bit around the forehead, just a tiny bit, but it's not bad. I mean, look at what's happening before and after. I mean, this is very, very nice. And then I go here and it's holding up. It's not bad. Okay, good. Now what happens if I take what I created here and I apply it to these shots? Now the first thing that I want to do is, remember we had already balanced these shots, so I don't want to waste what I did here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go right here and I'm going to grab still. So I'm going to right click and I'm going to say grab still. Now I'm going to go to this shot, park it on a hero frame, and I'm going to right click here and I'm going to say display node graph. Now that is beautiful, because what's going to happen here is that I can move around and I can start adding these nodes. So I can just grab this and I can drop it right here. So that was the split toning that came in. And now I can go up here and I can grab the qualifier and I can drop it right here. And then what I can do here is that I can right click and say add outside node. And then once it created outside node, I can just drop that on and boom, done. So now let's do the same exact thing right here. Done. So now if I come out and look at it, how good of a job it's doing. It's not doing a bad job. I mean, this looks like a scene from Tenet. But what we're noticing is that if I punch in really close, and if we look at like this area right here and what's happening around here, we're starting to see that there is a little bit of like discoloration that's happening. And we can attest to it when I hit Shift H and bring back my actual qualifier selection. And you can see like how this is not selected. So we're going to start to see like a little bit of discoloration in these areas. You see this? See, because these are not selected. So this is going to be a fight and something that you're going to have to keep an eye out for from shot to shot when you move on. So that's going to become like one of those things that is just going to be bothering you for 1,000 shots that you're working on a 40-minute episode, and you're going to have to go through per shot and just make sure nothing is cracking. I mean, overall, I'm not going to lie. I mean, the look is kind of dope, you know, and even the split toning that we did here went a long way. Okay, so it's pretty nice because I didn't want to be and I didn't want to like show you the complete wrong way and make it look ugly and then go show you the secret tool and show you how good that is. No, I want to give you different ways, things that I was doing right before I had the secret tool. I mean, this is exactly what I was doing to create this look, you know, professionally. And I was ending up with these results and people were loving it, but it required a lot more manual labor and it was prone to errors. Mistakes would happen and it was just very easy for it to actually slip through and for me to like, you know, deal with like those issues. So if I go here now and if I punch into Shift H, you can clearly see like how all of this is not selected. And if I come out, you can clearly see how this is like breaking. Like, I mean, this just does not look Hollywood. Like how the skin is like this is not what I want. If I do Shift H and how this is not selected, like this is not the desirable result that I want. So now you see exactly what I mean. Now you have to go in and you have to manually do so much work to get them to match, even after we did the proper balancing and got in here. So this was going to be our first method. All right, so first of all, big F up. My mic was sitting right there for the conventional part of this tutorial.
I didn't want to redo it because there was a lot of magic in there. So let's move on. The secret tool I'm talking about is our DCTL Qazi's toolkit. DCTLs are exclusive to Resolve because it's DaVinci Color Transform Language. That's what it's short for. So you cannot use it with Final Cut 10 or Premiere Pro. That said, I'm going to show you how to install it. If you go to your project settings down here, under color management, scroll down to open LUT folder, click on it. It will pop open this folder right here, which is kind of buried underneath like all these folders. And then once you get Qazi's toolkit and unzip it, you're going to get these two folders. So if you're using a panel, I would say go ahead, use without icons. If you don't have a panel with LCDs, I will say go use with icons. But this is the folder that we need to move in here, okay? In the LUT folder, not these. So just make sure that that happens. So I've already gone ahead and moved that in here. So these are all my DCTLs, okay? Another way to do it is like if you can go and click on this module right here under LUTs, right click and say reveal in Finder, and then exactly it's gonna pop this open and move the Qazi folder in here. Okay, so now you're probably like, okay, how do I access those? Because you can't just type in look DNA and for it to pop up here. So how can you go access those DCTLs? Well, just type in DCTL, okay? So I basically copied over the initial node tree from our conventional method, and then I left the balance node as we adjusted them in the previous versions. We're gonna leave those as is. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna create a new node. I'm gonna call it pre-QT chart. Okay, and I'm going to drop in this DCTL, and then from this DCTL list, you can go ahead and select QT charts. Okay, nothing happens because nothing is activated, but once we start clicking right here, we're going to see all these charts appear on our main screen. So why am I calling it pre-QT charts? Because the purpose of this right here is to use it for input monitoring, for your look building, in other words. And you will know exactly what I mean once we start building our look. I'm going to go to my grain and I'm going to hit Shift H or Shift S, and I'm going to create a new node. I'm going to call it Post QT Charts. Okay. I'm going to drop in this DCTL. I'm going to go back and select QT Charts. This time, this particular QT chart is going to be used for output monitoring, meaning quality controlling your image before it goes out to broadcast, Netflix, whatever have you. So here we're going to use it for these parameters right here. This is extremely important. Each tool needs to be put in the right position for you to take advantage of it and get the most out of it. So now that we have this here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and lay out the entire toolkit and then quickly take you through what needs to happen. So right here, I'm going to call this QT Skin Compressor. I'm going to create a new node. I'm going to call it QT Color Compressor. I'm going to create a new node. I'm going to call it QT Sat Control. Another node. QT Film Density. Another node. QT Skin Juice. Another node. QT Halation. Another node. QT Look DNA. Okay, don't get overwhelmed by like, dude, are you kidding me? Like the other version was like so much easier, so much better. We only used 2 different tools and we got there. Stay with me and let me just kind of show you what's really going on here and why this sequence, why this order matters. And why is Look DNA all the way to the end? So the Look DNA is the last color-related node that you're going to have. Afterwards, you're not going to have any color-related nodes. All you're going to have afterwards, texture-based nodes. And the simple reason behind that is Look DNA. This is our actual DNA of our entire look. So we do not make to manipulate anything afterwards. We do not want to manipulate anything afterwards. Like this is the last color change that will happen to our image. Okay? So I'm going to go ahead, drop the DCTL. I'm going to go ahead and pick Look DNA right here. So once you pick it, nothing really happens. This is where we want to start with. It's going to be used for our base look and our overall vibe that we want to create. Remember the split toning that we created with our curves? your look DNA is broken into 3 different main parts. So the first one is your curves, the second one is your balance, and your balance is extremely different than the balance controls right here. Okay, this works exactly as if you've made these changes in camera. Even our saturation model right here is a lot more sophisticated than the RGB based or YRGB based saturation model in your primaries. Then when it comes to bleach bypass, our ENR is second to none. You can create bleach bypass effect using Resolve, but the controls that are here and how it responds and how realistic it looks and feels, there is no comparison what you can get in Resolve. And then finally, we have presets, and we have the 2 most popular film print emulations here, Kodak 2383, Fuji 3513. If you've ever used these film print emulations with any other third-party plugin or even the LUTs available in Resolve, then you know that you have to do a lot more work to just make it look half decent. That's not the case here. So let me just blow your mind by clicking on Kodak 2383 in 3, 2, 1, and just like look at the image, what happens? Boom. Just look at the results that we achieved by dropping that. So one thing that I want you to do when you're using Look DNA, I want you to go in your pre-QT charts. Remember I said this is for look building, and I want you to select these 2, color chart and exposure ramp. This is extremely important. By the way, why is our pre-QT chart after our exposure and balance? The simple reason is that you have to get your image in a ballpark, balance it first before applying this. Otherwise, look at what's happening. So we have this color chart, right? And if I go here and if I do this, is it represented here? No. And that's why we have to do this little bit of like a manual labor to like get the image in somewhat of a ballpark before we apply this. But now if I apply a new node here and I move my offset, it is represented in our color chart. Okay. So that's just one little thing that you have to do for the QT chart to work properly. But now that our image is balanced, it's looking good, and we just applied the QT chart and our Kodak 2383 preset, look at how good this is looking. And I'm going to go ahead and select this, show curves, and it tells you exactly what is happening behind the scenes for the Kodak 2383, how it's built. It's telling you exactly what's happening. So the split toning that happens, this is how it happens. So like, look at my red is dropped in the undertones, and then it's lifted in the highlights and in the whites. And we can see it right here. Like if I go before and after, and you can even see it, that's why this ramp is so important, exposure ramp, because it's telling you how this is like neutral, and like here it's getting a little bit of warmth in there, okay? And then same thing is happening on the bottom end. It's getting a little bit of teal in there compared to like this gray that we had. And we can attest to that even if we go in this chart right here. I'm going to buy some real estate. So I'm going to click right here so we have like a little bit more room. So if I go here and if I do before, you see like how these are just neutral tones, but then now this is getting pretty warm, and then this is getting more teal. Like look at this, like bluish teal compared to like this gray right here. And then we're getting such a healthy contrast. Like we can see it here. Nothing is gone. All the information is there. The matted blacks with lots of richness on the bottom end that we're getting. The beautiful film-like roll-offs that we're getting on the top end. This is perfect. But this is just the beginning. We're going to exaggerate the F out of it. So let's just get in there. I'm going to be using my panel, but you guys are going to see the changes I'm making here. So let's put this down here. I'm going to go in my mid Y contrast, and I'm going to crank it. And look at, even if I max it out, this image is still controlled. Like you can just like print this, and this is looking good. Obviously, we don't want to go that far. So like I'm going to go somewhere around here. I do want a pretty pushed image. So if I do before and after, I mean, come on. And now we're manipulating our beloved Kodak 2383. So think about like the power of that. But obviously we want to bring in the split toning, exaggerate it a little bit more, because if we see our split toning here, this image had like, and now I'm going to the conventional, and already you're seeing the difference. Like it's so crazy how crisp this image is looking. And now what I want to do is I want to go in my The first thing that I do with my custom curves most of the time is like setting up like where do I want to put my highlights, where do I want to put my shadows, where do I want to put my midtones, and this tool is a killer for that. So I want to go in my highlights Y now and drop it. Like I want to just kind of like keep it somewhere around here. I want to have really nice gentle roll-offs. What do I want to do with my whites Y channel? Where do I want to keep this? I want to keep it somewhere around here. Like I'm going Sicario mode. Like I don't want to like just make it too poppy, right? So I dropped it about like, let's do half a stop. So like right here, I'm going to keep it somewhere around here. So now if I do before and after, it's so gentle, yet there's so much punch and pop in there. What do I want to do with my undertones Y? Do I want to raise it? Do I want to crush it? I want to keep it somewhere around here. What about my highlights Y? Like now I'm just want to see like, do I want to crank it a little bit more? No, I like it kind of gentle like that. And now if we go to our conventional to like what we're doing here, it's looking a lot more realistic. And you saw like how we got to control each area and look at how much push and pull I'm doing and everything is holding. Nothing is breaking. Now, the reason why we did these two charts, we put these two up because now we're going to start making magic. So we want to start creating like split toning and start pushing our image. And this is going to tell us exactly what's happening because on your actual image, there's so many different colors that they mess with your brain. But when you're just looking at a linear thing right here, like a ramp, you can just like kind of focus in on that and build like the exact exposure or exact colors that you want to add to create split toning. I mean, I can go as far as doing full screen and have this open right here. And now what I can do is like, I can go right here and I can just go, okay, let's go in my greens in my mid contrast and start cranking it and see what I'm doing. So I can see like, I can go, okay, this looks pretty nice. What about if I just add like reduce the blue in my a mid contrast and see what that does. And then do I want to add a little bit of red? Maybe something like that. Okay, not bad. And if I were to now come out of there and look at like what I'm doing, you see like we're creating exactly that, but we're just basically going off of what's happening here. Okay, let's keep that open still. And now what I want to do is like, and that is represented here too, like with my tones, what I'm doing. So what about my highlights? Like, can I grab my green and just like go a little bit more? I don't want to go too crazy, but even something like that, we're stylizing our image. Now, what about my blue channel? Do I want to drop it? Highlights my reds. Like I want to keep them somewhere around here. I want to raise my greens up a little bit like that. What about my whites? What do I want to do with the green channel in my whites? I want to keep it somewhere around here. What about the reds? I can raise it up a little bit, not too much. What about the blue? I can just keep overall image to have some warmth like that. Okay, what about the undertones? Like, can I take my greens and pull it down? Or do I want to go more into that teal world? What about my blues? Like, do I want like a little bit of a cleaner undertones? Okay, I like that. And just by that, doing this, like look at the changes that we made on this graph, solely looking at our QT charts. And now if I come out of the full screen mode and I look at like the image that I created, I mean, this is beautiful. This is like gorgeous, like what we just did. And the manipulation that we were able to create just by using genuinely our QT charts. And if I just turn this off and I look at this image, this looks such a realistic film-like split toning. And now if I go to my conventional method and look at that and how much we had to do, like use qualifiers, use split toning, and even then, like this just result is so much better. Okay? And like, it's embedded in the bones. Okay, I don't have to worry about that. Hey, is this key going to break or what's going to happen? But we're just getting started. So that's the first step. Okay, then I'm going to go into my skin juice. I'm going to drop the DCTL. I'm going to pick skin juice right here. Okay, and then as soon as I do that, what I want to do here is the first thing is that I want to turn on these two sliders, and I'm going to go back here and I'm going to turn on color chart. And going back to skin juice, now it is just selecting these hues. So it's telling me that, hey, I'm selecting your face. Do not get confused. This tool does not use qualifiers. It's built off of the 3x3 matrix. So it's using your RGB mixer. And think of where it says sat skin, it's basically like this. It's your orange and your teal, and then you have your greens and magenta. So your greens and your magenta. So it's basically a tool that is built off of 3x3 matrix doing this. So like if we increase our sat skin, we're basically opening up our image. We're creating complementary color scheme, and you will know exactly what I mean. But the first thing, the reason why we want to turn on show selected skin hue is because we want to make sure that under our selected skin hue, we rotate it. So we select, literally, we leave the lips as is, and we want to select everything else. So I'm going to go to something like this, and now I can turn this off. Now we don't need this, okay? And now that we're here, this is going to tell us the changes that we're making. We're going to see them represented right here. And also what's happening in our color chart is extremely important. So let's go ahead and just start cranking it, right? So I want to take my sat skin and I want to just start going crazy. And as soon as I do that, like, look what I'm doing. As I'm increasing the saturation in orange, I'm also increasing the saturation in my teals and cyans. Okay, so let's just say I park it somewhere around here. Look at how good this red is looking. Like, look where this red was before. It was looking all weird, like this tone right here, which is what happens with digital cameras. And then look at, by cranking the saturation, my red looks, and like it's sitting right in the middle, like where it should be. Looks so good. Now, I'm going to take my exposure of the skin and I'm going to manipulate it. And like, look at how solid this is. Like, I'm pushing it and it's holding it. Like, it does such a great job. What about the hue skin shift? This is where I want to add a little bit of like, I want to go in the more of the red, magenta skin tones than yellow. And we can get to see if I do bypass, like just look at the changes that we made right here in this ramp. So before and after, and then you can see the changes in the color chart. We're not done yet because this is where the magic happens, where the split toning just goes nuts. So like now it's our sat for green and magenta, and just keep an eye on the color chart, what I'm doing. So it's like, it's really letting me get the most out of my image, and I'm just going to keep manipulating it based on what I'm seeing in my color chart, and just use that as your guide. Like, where do you want to go? How far do you want to push it? Okay, so I'm going to end up somewhere around here. And now what I want to do is I want to take my global saturation and just dial it back. And I'm just looking at the skin tones. And I go, this looks pretty good. If I do bypass and like look at these tones and look at the color chart, and then I come out of it, just look at what I did to my image and how all of this latches on. So if I come out of it, like this is all part of it. So between my skin juice and my look DNA, we started with this, and this is where we are. And now if we go and compare it to our conventional method, you can see like how much more sophisticated this process is. The reason why I turned these off, and we're going to turn them on later because that's just going to add so much more cinematic vibe to our image. But the reason why I have them turned off right now is because there's certain charts that would just like freak out. Like if I have these turned on, because if I go and just turn this on, you see like what's happening on the edges. And then especially if I have like a ramp going on, you see like what's happening with the ramp. So I don't want to do that. So that's why like I just went ahead and basically turned these off. And obviously we can leave this on. But, you know, so that kind of helps me out here. So I'm going to go ahead and just like keep working so far. And then what's the next step? So the next step is going to be our SAT control. So I'm going to go ahead, drop a DCTL. I'm going to click right here, go down and select SAT control. And then it lets us further control our smoothness between those points. So let's just kind of exaggerate it and show you what's really going on. So if I go under the mid SAT, And basically, it's built off of a super, super sophisticated saturation model, which is spherical. You get to pick like cylindrical and HSV if you want to. And a lot of people are used to and heard of HSV, like the subtractive saturation. I didn't mean to do like quote unquote, like it's a really good saturation model, but it doesn't even come close to what you can do with spherical. Like spherical is on a whole another, like in a league of its own, and you will see what's going on here. Okay. So if I were to go under midsat and start cranking this, like look at what I'm doing to the image, right? And like look at what's happening here. And then if I just take my high sat, look at the steps, like these colors in the back, like areas that are like really, really saturated, and what I'm doing with it. Okay. Now I can go under my high sat control and like really ease off on like, when do these actually kick in? Like the middle point from like mid sat to a high sat, like when should it start happening? So I'm going to keep it somewhere around here, and you might think like, dude, this looks absolutely awful. That's okay, because this is where we want to go kind of back and forth and make some modifications. So now what I want to do in my look DNA, I want to go in here and I want to use my bleach bypass, okay? And I want to start cranking that. I don't want to go too much, but I want to keep it somewhere around 50-ish. And then another thing that I want to do is I want to take my saturation here and I want to dial it back just a touch. And I want to keep it somewhere around here. What was the point of that? The point of that was this. Like, if we would have just like pulled our saturation back, we would have ended up with something that's like really thin. I mean, even this looks good, but it doesn't look as good as this. Like, this is so full. And this is what creates the color separation. This is that film saturation that we see, like where when we look at an image like that and when we punch in close, I'm going to actually hide this so we can really see what is happening. Look at the blacks, look at the whites, look at the green, look at the skin tones, look at the reds. I mean, it looks like a green screen image. Okay, so this is before, this is after. And I'm going to be doing a lot more videos with these tools because every situation and every scene is going to be different. And we have to like, I have to show you how I professionally am using these tools and this combo of like going back and forth. You saw what I just did? I went into Look DNA. I added some bleach bypass so I can do a nice roll off on the top end of my saturation. And then I pulled the overall saturation back a little bit from my image and then came back here and you can see the magic that our sat control is making right here and how it's just like popping her out of the background and putting every single element in the image, like giving it so much weight. Okay. And now if we go to our conventional method that we built our look off of to this. And the craziest thing about this look is that it will, again, latch on because there are 0 qualifiers that are being used. So apply it to your 1,000 shots, 40-minute episode. Be done with it because it will latch on. And just overall, look at how beautiful she looks against everything. And like the detail in her lips, in her shirt, like the black of like the undershirt. And then all these tones, we're still creating a really nice, like warm tones. And like if somebody were to say, well, I still kind of like the greens, like in this area, don't worry about it. We're going to go and we're going to modify it. We'll get there. That's not a problem because we're not done yet. The actual magic is happening right now in this node, QT color compressor. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead. By the way, first of all, if we go here, if we turn this on and we could really see what this is doing. Like, that's why these charts are so important. Like, I mean, before and after, and you can just see how much life it's bringing into those like midtones, like where the actual weight is in your image. And usually you can't get in the bones and like pull that saturation out because your image is going to crack. It's not going to be using a very sophisticated saturation model as we're using here. So you're just not going to go there. You can't get there. But when you're going to watch something from Hollywood or even a commercial, high-end commercial, you're going to go, how the hell did they do that? These are the things that are happening on the back end. It's like these looks are just not created by using just your simple primaries, okay? And now what I want to do is I want to go under color compressor. I want to drop this DCTL, and I want to go ahead and select one of my favorite tools in the kit, which is color compressor. Now, the initial purpose of this tool is to create monochromatic looks like day for night, or think of like Mad Max's, or not Mad Max, Blade Runner's like orange scene, like how everything is like, basically you're taking all the hues that are close to the color that we want to pick, and we want to bring all the other hues around that color. So what am I talking about? Like if I were to go and turn all of these on, you're going to see what's happening. So let's turn off the highlights. And basically what's happening is that this is the hue that we have selected right now, which means if I were to take my compression near, and if I just crank it all the way, I just basically grabbed everything that was closer to this hue and I brought it into this world, okay? And now, if I just go under my target hue and I start moving it around, we can just go and create that color. Now, the crazy thing about it is that that red stays clean. It stays clear of like the look that we're creating, which is the power of this freaking tool, because you can create the matrix-like looks in seconds. Now, what makes it so out of this world, what makes this tool crazy is this guy right here, nearby color cutoff. What I'm going to do is I'm going to grab that and I'm going to start pushing it back and just like look at her skin. And I'm going to get it to a point where we basically get the skin tone completely out of that green that we added. Look at that green that we added. And just like that, again, let me blow your mind. It's not using qualifiers. It will not break. It's not using qualifiers at all. So just look at the color separation that we just created. I mean, look at this image, like right here, just this part, before and after. And if we were to compare it to our conventional method and then go here, I mean, even if I just turn all of these on now, so, we have the same texture and everything going on. Look at these two images. And conventional, and then what we got going on, and what we ended up with, and how everything is latching on. It is a push look. I admit it. But that's the whole idea. This is Tenet for you. Like when you watch Tenet and it's like it latches on, once again, by the time we're done creating this entire thing, I'm going to show you how we can take this and then with one click, we can turn it into a LUT. Okay. So that's another super, super exciting part of it. So this is what color compressor did for us. Mad magic. And it tells us right here. That's why I had the color charts here so we can see how it's manipulating our image. You could actually go ahead and turn on the ramp as well. And it's going to tell us like how it's adding these tones and where it's adding it. The craziest thing about color compressor, it will leave your blacks and it will leave your highlights. So it will not affect those at all. And you can see it right here and the blacks. And then it just takes everything in the middle and it just moves it wherever you want to take it. And that's the beauty of this tool. I mean, look at how powerful these tools are, what they do, and how easily we're getting there. I mean, I'm talking through as I'm building this, but imagine when I'm working on these projects and I'm just like flying through how fast I can get these looks dialed in. Okay. And now the final, I mean, so far the grade is so dialed in that I actually don't know what skin compressor will do at this point, but let's try it. So I'm going to drop the DCTL and I'm going to select skin compressor. The whole idea is that we want to remove any discoloration. If one part of the skin is yellow, the other one is magenta, we want to close that gap. So it's basically digital makeup. That's what this tool does. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to keep the color chart open and I'm going to turn these on. And what this is telling me that, hey, I'm picking these hues and it's the start off point is money with this tool. That's exactly what we want to manipulate. And let me just say it one more time. It is not using qualifier. So you don't have to worry about that. The way we're going to modify this, all we need to do, two things. I want to remove any sort of discoloration from my skin. I mean, my skin is looking flawless. So let's just start there. But I'm going to go ahead and select the compress skin hue and I'm going to go ahead and just crank it all the way to the right. So initially, it doesn't look like it's doing something. But if you look at the vector scope, this is before, it's like falling right here, and then this is after, and it's closing that gap. It's bringing it closer. And even if I come here and if I do before and if I do after, you do see like it's bringing it closer, okay? And if we really want to see the obvious difference to what's happening, I'm going to turn on skin chart. I'm going to put it in full. And now if I go here to skin compressor, let's turn these off for a second. And if I do before and if I do after, like, look at this. So this is like super reddish and then brown and then these tones. And if I do after, like it softens this and it just blends it in more. Like I said, we were starting off from a really good point. So like, look at the vector scope right here before and after. You see like how it just brings it closer? We didn't have to do much because we were already in a really good position. But this tool is absolutely incredible. I mean, in this example, it didn't have to do a lot of heavy lifting. But imagine if I didn't have skin juice and my image was looking like this, I could have come in here and like move my skin. Like, look at this, what I'm doing. And I would have just like put it exactly where I want it. I mean, this is a crazy powerful tool, guys. And I'm going to go ahead and just, actually, I'm going to go ahead and do this. So just go back to like how we had everything. And at this point, I can go in here, turn on skin hue indicator, look at what's really going on. Do I want to add a little bit more? So basically, I just like added a little bit more green into my skin tone. Do I want to do that a little bit more? Even something like this. So if I want to put my skin somewhere around here, actually, I like a little bit more magenta. So I'm going to split the difference. So even if I keep it somewhere around 3-ish, like I like where this is at. So I'm going to keep it there. We don't need film density. But if I were to just drop this on, for an example's sake, I'm going to go back to color chart. I'm going to go to row and I'm going to select film density here, because at the end of the day, you want to use the tools that are necessary, and you want to just ditch the other ones that you don't necessarily need for a specific look that you're creating. But let's keep an eye on this red in the back. Okay. And I'm going to take my red density and I'm going to crank it. Okay. So maybe I'm going to park it somewhere around here, but it's also affecting my girl. I don't like that. And the beautiful thing about it is that red roll off. Just grab it, move it until we're not doing anything to our girl, but we're still affecting the red in the back. Okay. So we're barely affecting our girl, but we're definitely affecting that in the back. And then what about the green? I actually don't, if anything, I want to take it back. I want to pull this green out. Best thing about these tools, just go in any direction that you want. Like nothing is going to crack. So I'm going to keep it somewhere around here. What about cyan? Somewhere around here. What about blue? Somewhere around here. So like, again, like I said, these, nothing is going to crack. So just keep it however you want to, wherever you want to put it. What about yellow? We don't have to modify that. Put it back there. Okay. So film density, I would leave it here. And obviously this is a great chart. So you just like look at what you're doing and the colors that you're manipulating right here. So we're seeing that. And then the final thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to select halation. And our halation is absolutely beautiful. Like look at what it does to an overall image. Just softens it just like film would. And then look at like how it's just adding the right amount of, like right here. It's just doing all the right things. And if I want to exaggerate it, I can go to 16 and then have that kind of image. I think I'm happy with 35, so I'm going to leave it here. And at that point, what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn all of these on and my effects. And guys, check it out. So let's go ahead. And actually, you know what? We can just keep these on and then see all the changes that we made. So let's kill all of this. We started with our look DNA. Now you get to see, like, I mean, oh my God. It actually doesn't even make sense that we started with this. And like, because when we did this, I thought like, oh my God, we're almost there. We're looking so good. This is crazy. And then we went and did the skin juice. We were here. And we did the SAT control and we were here. And then we did color compressor and that freaking did everything. And then skin juice or skin compressor, very subtle effect, but a necessary one. And then I think we can go back on that a little bit. And then we have halation, and that's our final image compared to our conventional method. And then this is our secret tool method. And let's go ahead and apply it to these and see what we come up with. So here you go. Like right off the bat, it is such a billion times better match than what we had right here. We had to like make a lot of adjustments to like dial everything in. But like if we come to this shot, right, and we look at like what is it missing? I feel like maybe we can just bring up the skin tones a little bit. So what I can do is I can go here, false color, come up here, and then raise it up a little bit, right? And then maybe pull up the gamma a tiny bit and just put the image right here, come out of it. And this is looking pretty solid to me. And now we go back to our image right here and we look at this, like this is looking pretty good. Do I want to bring my gamma down just a little bit? And then with this one, we kind of have to do the opposite. So we have to just like bring it down a little bit. I feel like it's just too bright. So go back in false color and come in here, drop it a little bit, but then I want to like kind of pull my gain up or gamma up and then gain right here. And if I come out, I'll look at that image. Maybe it's just gotten a little bit too dark. So let's just keep it somewhere around here. And then even something like this. And then if we go to our conventional, to ours, like look at the lips, the color of the jacket, skin tones, hair, such like jet black, everything like latches on. So just look at these tones, right? If we go back to our conventional method compared to what we created here, and how everything just belongs and where everything is sitting. Like if I go to the neck right here compared to like this, super, super thin compared to how everything is separated. More importantly, if we go to our 709, that's our 709. And then this is what we ended up creating. So log, this is our look, 709. And then that's our final grade. And if I were to go here and turn on skin indicator, and let's just do that for all of these, because what I really want to see is where is my skin sitting in all of these shots. So I have a little bit of magenta, I have a little bit of magenta, and this is where we can go in here and just kind of go, well, okay, maybe I can go take it there. And then with this one, we can actually add more magenta. And if I were to hide this for all these shots and now look at it, feels like a better match, but we can actually go in and adjust it even more. So if I go here, right? And if I just go to, like, I'm just like looking at her skin and I'm like, I would rather leave it here. And then what about here? Didn't mean to do that. And if I go here, I go. It's looking pretty good here. And then this shot obviously has a lot more saturation. So another thing that we're going to do is, this is where the sat false color is an absolutely killer. So if I go here, right? And if I just turn the sat false color on and look at all these shots, I mean, look at the amount of saturation that we have here, right? Like it's running into this area right here compared to these shots, like where it's not that juiced. So what can we do to do that? We can just go in here and we can just take our global saturation and start cranking it, crank it until we get something like that. And then we can come in here and a similar thing. We can just go to global saturation and crank it up a little bit, not too much. And if we come out of it, like all of these, and we look at it, like now we have a very similar saturation. Now, I personally feel like it's a bit much. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my look DNA at this point, and I'm going to go to my overall saturation, and I'm going to keep dialing it back to something like this. And then I'm just going to select all of that, and I will do ripple select. And now it's going to make that change, as you can see, to all these shots. And now it just like brought them down, and I think it looks so much better. And then eventually, if you want to turn it into a LUT, the thing that you would do is going to be this. So let's just say if I create a new version, and then if I go to this version right here, and I just select all of this and delete it, and all of this and delete it, this is what I'm left with, right? But this is my actual look. This is like what it took to create this look, right? So what we can do is click right here, right click on this clip and say generate LUT. And let's just do 33 point cube. And let's just save it here. So this could be teal and orange QT, okay? And just drop it under the LUT folder. Now what I want to do is I can go back to this version, create a new version, okay? So now I have this version 4. I can delete all of these, create a new node right here, go under LUTs, refresh, and look for that teal and orange Qazi's toolkit and apply it, double click. And as soon as I do that, look at this. This is what I'm talking about, guys. This right here, built in, okay? Like latches on. Now, this is exactly what you need. When you hear about like Hollywood movies and they are working with their colorists like beforehand, like how Lawrence Sher worked with Jill Bogdanovich before they shot Joker. So what they would do is like, they would be testing out and building these looks, okay, as close as possible to what the final product is going to be. And then she would kick out this LUT as a monitoring LUT. And then Lawrence Sher would inject it into his camera. So when he's shooting it, he can actually light accordingly because things are going to be looking like this from his camera when they're going through that particular LUT that we just generated. You see this? And now we don't need all these, like right here, all these DCTLs, we just cooked them up into a LUT. So go ahead, save it. And now this could be like your teal and orange LUT. As a matter of fact, what I'm thinking about doing is that I'm just going to give you access to this LUT. And I can't assure you that it's going to work on every single shot, but if your image is balanced properly, and if you're working in DaVinci Wide Gamut, you can slap this on and you can always end up with this sort of color separation. I mean, just like look at the image that we ended up creating. And boom, just one node, LUT. And now if I just play it through, it latches on. It's going to look beautiful, like it's playing in real time. And this is the magic of this secret tool. And there you have it.
I know I've been quiet for a minute, I've been grinding still in it, I've been counting these digits, excuse me. I know I've been quiet for a minute, but I'm back on my business. If you see me, don't trip, just excuse me.
So as you saw, there was actually no competition. Qazi's toolkit, every single change that we made there was far superior in every way compared to the conventional method. Now that I have Qazi's toolkit, I just can never go back. It doesn't matter. It didn't even have to be my product. It could have been somebody else's product. But it's like once you start grading using these tools, how efficient you're going to be, how strong your actual looks are going to be, there's just literally no going back. So if you are interested, I have a link in the description where you can save $200 off the entire bundle if you purchase Qazi's toolkit. There's also tons of information on each product page, so just go ahead, learn more. If you enjoyed this video, then do me a favor, smash the like button, subscribe to the channel, and I will see you guys in the next one. Much love, fam.